Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another Saturn versus PlayStation video. As you will have seen from the title of the video, we are taking a look at the original Street Fighter Alpha. It came out on both systems very close together, and as always we'll be taking a look at how they compare in terms of looks, sound, gameplay, differences in content and lifespan, and which one is the overall winner.
Street Fighter Alpha.
So this week we're going to start with the PlayStation first, and without a doubt for December of 1995, Street Fighter Alpha in my eyes is a really decent looking game. I think the characters look good, all the sprite work in the game is really nice. I really do like that. The backgrounds, whilst there's not a whole lot going on in them, they do look pretty decent, and the specials, they look really good as well. I actually really love the way the specials look in the Alpha series in general. The game as well runs really fine. There's no noticeable slowdown, no issues with the way it performs in my opinion. I think overall the PlayStation version of Street Fighter Alpha really doesn't have any problems whatsoever in the looks department. It just really is pretty decent overall.
KO. You win. Perfect.
So moving over to the Saturn version, and I'm going to say pretty much more of the same. The game looks great on the Saturn as well. The characters look really good. They're animated just as well as the PlayStation. The backgrounds look just the same in my eyes. Just the same sort of stuff going on in every regard. I really think it's difficult to spot any major noticeable differences between the two versions. Now, one thing that I do think is slightly different is the use of color. Some of the colors are slightly different between the games, and I do think the shadow colors are slightly different as well. Now, I am colorblind, and I'm stressing this because people will sometimes nitpick with things that I say, so it's really difficult for me to spot color differences between the game. Now, I think the Saturn version shadows are more arcade perfect, if I'm not mistaken, but for me there's no real difference in terms of quality between the two. One thing there is a slight difference is the fact that the PlayStation version has a slightly larger viewable screen size. You'll notice it when it changes from the PlayStation to the Saturn footage. It's nothing major, it doesn't affect the game in any way, and it doesn't really take anything away from the Saturn version, but it is noticeable. And the only other thing that I'm going to talk about in terms of, I guess, performance is the fact the Saturn version has vastly superior load-in times. And what I'm going to do is just play you two loading clips on the screen so you can exactly see this difference yourself.
Round one. Fight.
Hadouken! Hadouken!
So when summarizing looks and performance, it's very difficult. The PlayStation has a slightly larger viewable screen area, and the Saturn's loading times are approximately twice the speed of the PlayStation. So overall, I'm going to call it a tie in this department. I think some people will probably try and say, oh, the Saturn's better at 2D than the PlayStation. But in this early 2D fighting game, there really is nothing in terms of overall quality and the way they look to tell between the two. So for that and that reason alone, I'm going to call it a tie. So moving back to the PlayStation for sound effects and music, and I've said it I think a long time ago in my reviews for Street Fighter Alpha on the Saturn and Street Fighter Alpha 2, I love the Street Fighter sound effects, and I think the music on the games are fantastic as well, and there's no exception here. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about the PlayStation or the Saturn version. In my eyes, it's neck and neck. There's basically no difference between the two. They've got the same tracks, they've got the same sound effects, and they all sound fantastic. I cannot say anything negative at all in the sound effects and music department. So in this area, it is no surprise that it's a tie. Staying with the Saturn for gameplay, and I think I said it in my review, this game plays brilliantly on the Saturn. The Saturn pad is designed for these 2D beat-em-ups which require 6 buttons, your weak, medium and strong punches and your weak, medium and strong kicks. The pad works perfectly for a game like this. The D-pad is pretty good for pulling off all the special moves as well. So without a doubt, Street Fighter Alpha plays brilliantly on the Saturn.
You win.
So heading back to the PlayStation version for gameplay, and of course the game has all the same characters and they have all the same moves, which is fantastic. But if you played a Street Fighter game on the PlayStation, then you probably know what I'm going to say next. The PlayStation control pad is not as well suited to a 6-button interface because 2 of your standard attacks are going to be assigned to the R and L buttons, and this is a pain and it's inconvenient, and you're going to have to go into the control pad configuration probably to set your strongest punches and kicks to X and O or whatever, because you're going to have to change the control pad layout to have more fun with this game. Of course, you're still going to be using R and L for 2 of your other attacks if you want to use them, so it's just never going to be suitable. And the other thing is the D-pad is nowhere near as good as the Saturn pad for pulling off your special moves. The Saturn has a circular 8-direction control pad. The PlayStation has a 4-way control pad, and it just makes it a little bit more tricky to pull off those special moves. So, of course, with that being said, it means the Saturn version comes out on top in the gameplay department.
You win. Perfect.
So moving on to content and lifespan next, and there is basically nothing to separate the 2 games here either, because both games have got arcade mode, versus mode and training mode. Both games have got the same number of characters with the same number of moves. There really is no difference between the 2 games in this regard, unless I'm missing something secret that I've no idea about. The games are like for like in terms of content and lifespan, which of course means in this area as well, it is a tie between both versions. So like always, the final thing is to come to a decision on which version comes out on top this week, and it really comes down to a few small minor differences between the 2. First of all, at least in the PAL region anyway, the PlayStation version has a slightly larger viewable screen size. It's really nothing major and it doesn't really affect the game at all. Secondly, the shadows for the super moves on the Saturn version are, I believe, more arcade authentic. There is nothing wrong with the shadows on the PlayStation version, and for me, with the eyesight issues that I have, it's very, very difficult to tell. Now, the other main difference in terms of performance is the fact that the Saturn version's loading times are twice as fast as the PlayStation. This is quite noticeable in the game. And the other thing is, again, the other slightly more major thing is the fact the Saturn version plays better because the control pad is more suited to these kind of games. I said it last week with Tomb Raider that the PlayStation pad was more suited for a 3D adventure game. The Saturn pad is more suited for a 2D fighting game. And that is why this week, overall, the winner is the Saturn version, which means the Saturn takes a 6-5 lead now, as we're 11 games into the series. So we're getting quite far and we've progressed quite a bit since the first episode. But as always, these are just my thoughts. What I'm always interested in is everybody else's thoughts on the 2 versions of the game. So let me know down below if you think I've got it right or if you think I've got it wrong. I always love to hear other people's opinions. That is it for today. Thank you for watching, and I will be back in the near future with another Saturn versus PlayStation video. Goodbye for now.